Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. These are the words of George Santayana. And welcome to Doomed to Repeat It, the podcast in which I, Deliso Chaponda, I'm going to look at things that are happening right now in the news. And with the aid of a time machine, I'm going to look back through history to similar times in which this sort of thing has happened, either to learn from it or simply to appreciate the fact that humans have never changed. People always think, oh, we're living in strange times, we're living in unique times. We are not unique. Human beings now versus human beings during the Roman Empire, or maybe even Neanderthals, are the same. We just have better gadgets. Welcome to Doomed to Repeat It. Okay, so this week we will be talking about the very tragic passing of Jason Arday. Now, if you're not familiar with this, he was a professor, the youngest black professor at Cambridge University. He had a very lauded ascent, and then 2023, so he was accused of plagiarism, and then the media really ran with the story this year, even though he was not proved to have done any plagiarism. In fact, John Moores University cleared him of those charges, but the press got wind of it. Other stories he told, which were questionable about their verity, also came into light, and there was a pile-on. Now, a lot of people are debating, was he really lying? Was he not telling the truth? Was he a plagiarist? Was he not a plagiarist? But I would actually go so far as to say that it does not matter. There is a thing that we do where people are turned into pariahs. People who have done wrong are turned into pariahs. They get the scarlet letter. They are not treated like human beings. There's a total pile-on which happened. And if you look at what happened to this man over the last few weeks, there were hundreds of articles, and that's just articles in print medias. There were also hundreds of people on social media doing think pieces. There were people doing memes. There were people making bad jokes. I'll admit, I did a joke in the midst of it. And you all think of the effect of one criticism, but you don't actually think of how it must feel to have 10,000 criticisms coming at you at the same part. There's a book by John Ronson called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. And an example he gives is, in medieval times, if you were someone who had done wrong, like you had, stolen, or you had, had public nudity or something, one of the ways you'd be punished is you'd be put in the stocks, the wooden stocks, and people would throw like vegetables at you. But the interesting thing is, once around 5 or 6 people had thrown vegetables at you, records of what happened at the time shows that most people stopped throwing vegetables because they saw the damage had been done, the person had been punished, and they would just sit there in the filth. But the thing about social media attacks is you don't see the effects you are having. So one person's lobbing insults, one person saying this person is a scam artist, this person is a terrible person, and then more and more and more and more of these things pile on till the point that it can be unbearable. Now, in an alternate world, he would have just left the country, gone somewhere for a year and come back. But in the moment, he was feeling all of these things and, feeling shamed. His family was being harassed. He was being harassed. He was being talked about on every station. And it wasn't even like he was being spoken of as a person. He almost became a symbol. And this is the problem, is people, when they see you as a symbol, they don't see you as a human. So a lot of the people who are angry at him somehow almost treated him like a totem of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They claim, and I dispute this claim, but I've watched videos and read articles of these people that they're like, the only way that this person, his ascension to being a Cambridge professor makes sense is that he was given a leg up because he's black and he was disabled, right? He had neurodiversity. And so they say it's because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, he got a leg up. And they say this as fact, but it's a feeling. It's a feeling. There's no evidence to this fact, right? And actually, if higher learning institutions like Cambridge and Oxford were actually weighted towards brown people, they would be swimming in brown professors, wouldn't they? If they were giving everyone a leg up who is brown, you would have hundreds of brown professors when actually there's a handful. Of something like 2,000 professors, there's 70 who are black. Now, I read this off a website. My statistics may be slightly off depending on where you look, but you will see what I mean. There is no place which doesn't show that it's a tiny fraction, but it doesn't matter, right? To these people who feel that whiteness is under attack, they felt like he is a totem of one of the people who is getting two-tier justice, one of the people who diversity quotas are helping. And so there was a barrage beyond, even if he was a fantasist, even if he did plagiarize, which hasn't been proved, and at most, John Moores University, where he did his PhD, said that some of the references were misattributed. But either way, doesn't matter, because the stories had been now in the public imagination, and there was so much of a barrage of what a horrible person he was, or what a scam artist he was, harassment, and then it is unsurprising that a few days ago he was tragically found to have unalived himself. Now, on the other side, he was also now a totem of how black people, whenever they're on their way up, there are white supremacists who try to hold them down. And so the attacking of him is also now being used as an example to show the way in which the white supremacy tries to keep black people down. And there's this debate from this side and that side, and there's so much debate, and I wonder if it's either of them. Maybe it's a bit of both, but I actually think it's more of an example of the ravenous nature of public shaming, which is hyper turbo boosted by social media. There's always been public shaming, right? Nathaniel Hawthorne in The Scarlet Letter spoke of Hester Prynne being publicly shamed. That's The Scarlet Letter. But I mean, she was a fictional character, but she was based on several actual examples. This is a thing which has gone on so far. I'm sure if you went into the cavemen times, who drew another caveman and pointed an arrow at him, bad, anyway, all I'm saying is it's eternal, right? Now let's go to the time machine, and we will look at other times in history that people have been publicly shamed. Our first stop in the time machine of public shaming is 2005, and we're going to talk about Dog Poop Girl. Yes, you heard me right, Dog Poop Girl. Some of you may remember this, a lot of you won't, but this is one of those cases which surely shows you how ravenous social media can be, okay? So this happened in Korea, in Seoul. There was a woman on public transport with a little lap dog. Now her lap dog pooped, as dogs are wont to do. She did not clean up the dog's poop. Someone else who was on the subway said, "Clean up your dog poop." And she refused to, and she walked out. Yes, she did wrong. In fact, often in the case of these public shamings, it's worse when the person did wrong. It's not like you're an innocent person and everyone's piling on you. It's usually you've done something wrong, but the punishment does not fit the crime. So Dog Poop Girl, her image was everywhere. People were sending her hate mail. People were yelling at her. People were saying she should be unalived. The rage was so much, and she was such a pariah that she had to actually quit university. And that is such an example of dog poop. Just dog poop, such a small, insignificant thing can lead to someone being harassed to the point that they quit university. Mind you, no one harassed the dog. The dog was the one who pooped, not her. Now, that was a bit of a silly example. Let's get back into the time machine and we will talk about other times where people have been publicly shamed. Our next stop on the time machine, looking at moments of public shame, is 1997. 1997, and we look at possibly the key case in the internet world. Was this the first public shaming in the age of the internet? Monica Lewinsky. Now, everyone from my age group will remember this. So Monica Lewinsky had an affair with Bill Clinton. There were lots of sordid, salacious details, and that always drives the story more. Public shaming is one thing, but if it's sexual, if there's infidelity, it literally is the scarlet letter of shame. She is actually quite inspiring in how she dealt with it, because for years she got hate mail, she got death threats, she got called every word from prostitute to like every insult one could have for a woman was said towards her. And this was by everybody. She was global. She couldn't even do the thing which I suggest for some people, where you go to another country. There was no country where her story wasn't being told. And what was inspiring about her is she endured the shame, and then she became an advocate against bullying, particularly online bullying, which she had endured. She gave an amazing TED talk, and then also she approached it with a bit of a sense of humor as time has gone on. She has a very funny online persona. She'll make jokes. She's very well aware of how people see her. And it's really actually quite amazing that she bounced back, because she was really young when it happened. And for some people, it would cast a shadow over the rest of her life. But she was strong enough that she's now got a podcast. She now talks about public shaming. And anyway, I'm not saying that anyone could do it. Like, if I was publicly shamed, there was a time when I almost was, because there was a tape which almost came out, but thankfully it didn't come out, where it was nothing I did that was wrong. It was just humiliating. But either way, the wisest response, I think, is you've got to laugh along with everybody else. It's very hard to do because you feel ashamed, you feel in the corner, you feel mocked. But what she did over time, where she would laugh along with the joke, and she would kind of be like, yeah, that was what I did when I was in my 20s, and kind of look back at it with laughter, makes you're still the victim of ridicule, but you are now rising above it. I hope none of you endures it. None of you have to face it. But if any of you do in your lives, one way is to join it, right? It's the Eminem maneuver in 8 Mile. Before the person he's rapping against can say these insults, he says them about himself first. If people are shaming you, you say the things they're going to say funnier than they could and act like you're okay with it. I don't know if it works. I'm also not in this moment suggesting that Jason Arday could have done that. Like, I'm just saying that if any of you find yourself on a smaller level being humiliated, that is a good way to possibly fight back. But the Jason Arday case maybe is beyond understanding, because none of us have had over 200 articles written about us within 10 days. Okay, let's get back into the time machine, and we're going to go further back. We have 2 more stops. The time machine next stops in the year 1950 with Ingrid Bergman. Now, a lot of you are young. You don't know who Ingrid Bergman was. She was an extremely lauded, extremely talented, extremely beautiful actress who was in lots of movies, black and white movies back in the day, and she was beloved. This is the other interesting thing about the public shaming. It's one thing if you're a stranger who does something and everybody piles on you, like happened to Justine Sacco, who tweeted something racist and the world backlashed on her. But the backlash is bigger if you are someone famous. There's a poem by Frank Herbert, the guy who wrote Dune, which he wrote in the Dosadi Experiment, which I always loved, and it was this: "Here lies a toppled god. His fall was not a small one. We did but build his pedestal, a narrow and a tall one." And that's the thing. The more someone is beloved, the more someone is admired, the bigger the backlash when they sin against our societal morality. Now, Ingrid Bergman had an affair with a director, the director Roberto Rossellini. Now, in response to her having an affair, there was a huge backlash. I mean, right now, we don't have the same kind of moral puritanical expectations of our entertainers, but back then in 1950, this was tantamount to her. She was now a devil. There was a huge backlash to the point that she was brought up on the floor of the American Senate, and she was called by senators an influence of evil. Can you imagine that? Someone having an affair and being called an influence of evil who is going to lead the kids astray. I've always thought this is an interesting thing where people think that people are influenced by the people they admire. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, just because you admire someone doesn't mean you take on every bad bit of press you've read about them. I don't understand. Our final stop is the year 1895. Oscar Wilde. Now, Oscar Wilde's public shaming is actually very comparable to this, because it was revealed that he was a homosexual, right? And in that time, he wasn't just persecuted for this. There was a feeding frenzy of all of the Victorian papers, which are very similar to the tabloids of nowadays. His trials were mass entertainment. Whenever he had these obscenity trials, crowds of people would be gathered, newspapers ran hundreds of articles of him. His name was no longer advertised. His plays were cancelled. And anyway, it was just absolutely ravenous tearing of him, which is, I think, comparable to what happened to Jason Arday, right? People identified something which they felt was wrong in his behavior, and then piled on, and because people felt righteous, they piled on without any concern for the fact that he's a human being. In looking at all these examples, I think personally that we can learn that, I'm going to have to go biblical. I'm sorry if you are not religious, but even if you're not religious, you've got to recognize the wisdom of that line from the Bible. Let he without sin cast the first stone, particularly on the internet where you cannot see the damage your stone is doing. It's a lot of fun to throw the stones. It's not fun to receive them. And, I'm not saying so much is being spent on who's to blame. I don't think it's any one person who's to blame. I think it's the structure and it is the nature of clickbait and the way that, these negative stories are amplified, and then the algorithm feeds it more and more and more, and then papers realize that this is getting lots of clicks, so they commission another story and then another story, and it's not even like a focused, let's get that guy. It's, people are interested in this. Let's feed it more, and then we're seeing it more, and then we're clicking more on it, and it grows and grows and grows until it is a whirlwind and it tears someone down. So hopefully they will not be, look, of course there are going to be more public shamings and public pile-ons, but I hope that, we remember this and cases like Caroline Flack, and people maybe try to be a bit more sensitive in public pile-ons. And if ever they come for me and pile on me because I did something wrong, don't click, people. I made an honest mistake. I don't even know what I've done yet, but I'm apologizing before. I think everybody should apologize for the things that they could be caught for in advance. I made an honest mistake. I didn't mean that joke, which was insensitive. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen. That has been episode 1 of Doomed to Repeat It, the podcast where we look at moments in history and times where similar things have happened. This is going to be a weekly podcast. Tune in next week, subscribe, share, and do all the things that more accomplished podcasts ask you to do. Join the Patreon. I haven't even made one yet, but you know the drill. This has been Delisa Trapanda. Till next time.